Old school, classic, breathtaking, thrilling, words that describe this motorsport facility. They call it Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, but to the old guard, you can call it Mosport. What a racetrack just outside Bowmanville, Ontario, Canada, and call it an hour and a half to the east, depending on traffic, of course, it could be 2.5, of Toronto. Race fans have been rocking here since 1961. The first race here back in 1961, 40,000 Canadian motorsport fans showed up to watch Sterling Moss take the victory in the first ever race here at this facility. It's an absolutely thrilling venue, and the weather perfect today. Crowds on hand. Brian Till and Ryan Marine will have the call for you today for round 10 of the VP Racing Sports Car Challenge.
Oh, fantastic conditions. Great to be at CTMP. Great to see so many of the Canadian race fans out here early for the first of 2 races for the championship. Couldn't ask for better conditions, all things considered, for a midsummer morning here just outside of Toronto. 68 degrees in the air, 84 degrees on track. Previous session qualifying for Pilot Challenge, we saw some really quick lap times. So I think we're in store for a pretty good show here, Brian.
Lining up the cars in VP Racing Sports Car Challenge. Remember, LMP3 or P3 category, the prototypes and GSX GT4 base cars. We talk about this racetrack, though, Ryan. It has everything a driver could want, and at times, things drivers don't want. We talked about it being just to the east of Toronto. Take us around.
Wow, what a place. CTMP, 10 turns, 2.5 miles, but that doesn't really do it justice. Look at all of these different areas that we have to highlight. Turn 5, Moss Corner, certainly one of them. Passing opportunity there if you're brave. Same for turn 8 at the end of the Mario Andretti straight. That leads into the high-speed S's. It's a relatively short run down the pit straight here at CTMP, but the thing this map doesn't show is the elevation change. Around 170 feet of elevation change across a lap at CTMP, which makes this, along with the high speeds, one of the most challenging circuits in North America.
You talk about short run down the front straightaway, but then into turn 1, especially aboard a prototype. Turn 1, 2, 3, and 4, all the way down to Moss Corner. You can kind of take a breath at the turn in for turn 1, but I think you hold it all the way until you get over there to turn 5, Ryan.
Oh, no doubt about it, because you're going up and down, cresting corners. We've got different surfaces that you're switching between, different ages of pavement. There's nothing cookie cutter about any of these corners either. Each of them is a little bit different, so the challenge is immense. And that's when you're driving by yourself. Never mind when you're in traffic with other cars in your class, and then you throw in mixed class racing, and this has all the makings of some potential fireworks here across 45 minutes.
Absolutely. Wyatt Brickacheck on pole in the P3 category and sits 7th in the overall P3 Drivers' Championship. But I tell you what, he has been super quick here all weekend long. He's missed a couple of races this year, hasn't run the full season, but he has led both practice sessions and then obviously qualifying, starting up front, that Tony Driver Development Ligier chassis. 2 different types of chassis in the P3 category, the Ligier and then the Duquesne. The Ligier, you can kind of get an idea of, especially on the frontal shots, a little bit more of a rounded nose, and the Duquesne a little bit sharper up front in that center section, but each of them have their attributes and each of them very, very quickly. Oscar Tunjo, the championship leader outside the front row.
Yeah, really close between the 2 chassis as well. Like you talked about, the front row, the top 2 qualifiers, they were separated by less than 1/10 of a second in qualifying. So really, really close between the 2 of them. You mentioned Brinkacek not running the full season here. He's busy though this season, also racing LMP3 over in the European Le Mans Series, 6th in the championship there at this point in the season. So he's getting a lot of seat time, bouncing back and forth across the pond in cars like this. And so even though he's not a full season competitor in VP Racing Sports Car Challenge, when he gets in, he is certainly still race fit and very accustomed to being in one of these race cars. So it's pretty quick for him to get up to speed, it would seem.
All right, getting ready to go. The Corvette pace car, lights out, and General Motors' strong connection to this area up here. They've got the Oshawa car assembly plant just about 30 minutes away. So take a look at GSX as well. GT4-based machinery, good stuff, great racing all season long. And Weston Workman has controlled that GSX category in his Rafa Racing Toyota GR Supra. On pole yet again. Here we go. Ligier on pole, 2 drivers right, Duquesne outside. Championship leader outside the front row, and for Wyatt Bricacek, he could care less about Tuno's championship lead. He wants to win this race, but Ryan, at the drop of the green flag, it looked to me like Bricacek may have changed lanes before the line. Officials will look at that and see if that might be an issue. Remember, you got to maintain column formation until you cross the start line.
That is one of the quirks of racing in IMSA, really in the U.S. And we talked about Bricacek not being over here full time, so maybe that's something that could have caught him out. We'll let race control sort that out. For the moment, he's able to control this lead from the front. We had a change, I think, for 3rd position there with Lejoy Garg making his first appearance in some time. Danny Sufi fighting it out. In GSX, Workman got a really good start, and Kyle Chavez did as well. The car in 3rd, Ismail Elahi. He's been in the championship all season, but this is his first race in the Aston Martin, having started the year in the Porsche.
We talk about that Aston Martin and Ismail Elahi. He has been super quick all season long, but he seems to have really taken to this Aston Martin platform this weekend. 3rd in the first practice session, 2nd in the second practice session, and on a charge right now. But talk about the charge. It's Bricacek up front, and one of the strong suits to the Ligier chassis over the years, Ryan, has been its ability to get up to speed quickly, and Bricacek wasting absolutely no time to pull out that gap over Tuno, and Tuno really loose over the top of turn 2.
Wow, that was a huge moment. That's a high-speed quarter as well there in turn 2. Great work by Tuno to try and corral that car, get it back under control. He's able to continue on. To your point about the Ligier, I think reputationally, they're known for making a bit more downforce. That comes sometimes, though, at the cost of drag. That said, around this place, you want all the downforce you can get. All these high-speed corners that pushes the car down onto the track, gives you grip, gives you the confidence to go look for that speed.
Yeah, the only place you really need that straight line speed is down the long back straightaway. And if you can build a gap essentially from turn 8 all the way over to turn 5 because of downforce, you're going to have an advantage. Talk about an advantage, looking for an advantage now into turn 8. Great battle here. That is the number 30 that is in front of that. That's Bijoy Garg out in front of Danny Sufi. Remember, Danny Sufi in this championship hunt sits 2nd in the overall championship and would like to get past Garg. Garg, as you mentioned at the top of the show, his first appearance, former champion in VP Racing SportsCar Challenge. He too has raced LMP3 cars around the world. He's a Le Mans 24-hour winner in LMP2 is Bijoy Garg. So obviously a very talented race car driver. Some of the best LMP3 drivers in the world here at VP Racing SportsCar Challenge.
Yeah, great to have a driver of the choice caliber back in the championship. You see him for the endurance rounds of the WeatherTech Championship, driving with Inter Europol, but it's the chance to jump back aboard an LMP3 car, and right now has the car sitting in 3rd place, withstanding some pressure from Danny Sufi. Now, the leader, Brian, you called it out at the start. Was there going to be a problem changing columns for Bricacek? And race control has reviewed it. A 10-second post-race penalty for Bricacek now for a false start. Effectively, that's changing columns before you get to the start line. That means he needs to get his head down now and try and build a gap. Right now, it's only 2.3 seconds over Tunho, so that's obviously not going to get the job done. Bricacek's got to be fast now and hope that this race goes green to the finish.
Take a look at the start. The red, white, and black prototype driver's left. He's in the column and then moves to the left side of the road clearly before the line, and that will cost him, as you mentioned, 10 seconds. He's got 3 seconds in hand right now, and we've got just over 40 minutes to go. So if this race were to stay green and you can maintain this pace, maybe he can get that 10-second lead that he needs. But you said it, Ryan. He needs to put his head down, focus forward, and hope that everyone else races clean behind him.
Yeah, that's the trouble. Your fate's no longer in your own hands with a situation like this. A full course yellow erases any gap that he's built, especially if it comes late in the race. And if the race were to end behind the safety car, then that becomes a really big penalty. for Brickachek, but he can't worry about any of that right now. All he can control is his lap times, and he is absolutely answering the bell, Brian, because he's just turned in his best lap. Now this lap, he's gone purple in sectors 1 and 2. There's no waiting around for Wyatt Brickachek. He is charging.
I'll tell you what, I'm gonna put the headset on you, Ryan. You're the crew chief, you're his engineer, you're his team manager. Do you tell him right now?
I think you do. I think you've got to know the situation because, you know, normally if you have a 3.6 second lead, you might say, all right, well, let's sit back and conserve a little bit, not take any risks, make sure you have tires for a late race restart. None of that really matters for Brickachek right now because he's carrying that penalty. So if I'm in the cockpit, that's information I'd like to have because I can adjust the way that I drive accordingly.
Well, driving accordingly, he's doing everything he needs to do now, up to 3.6 seconds. We had a look at Weston Workman in the number 8, the Toyota GR Supra, leading in GSX, and he has had an absolutely perfect season so far and leading almost every practice session, not every one, but on the pole for all of the races and victory. And look at that car, just so well balanced over the top of 2, down into the compression there at the bottom of the hill. Obviously, Workman, a very talented race car driver, but this Rafa Racing team puts a very good Supra underneath him week in, week out.
No question about it, and he's able to drive it to its fullest extent because he's racing with a ton of confidence at the moment, and why not? He's won every race, fastest lap in every race, pole position in every race to this point in the season, and there is some new blood in to challenge him. Kyle Chavez, who runs second right now, we've seen him in Pilot Challenge competition over the course of the last couple seasons, and very quick, similar platform or identical platform in the Supra there. And this was one I was really curious to see. How close would these two be in this race? What would Workman do now that he's got somebody who's capable of nipping at his heels on a regular basis here this weekend? And so far, he's really answered the bell, extending that lead now up over 2 seconds.
Workman, Chavez, Elahi, then Courtney Crone. She rounds out the top 4. Then Justin D. Benedetto rounds out the top 5. Courtney Crone second in the championship right now. And one of the great things about the VP Racing Sports Car Challenge is, as a driver, it's a single driver format, but you can bring your driver coach. And you think about Courtney Crone with that Carbon Motorsports program. Jeff Westphal is her coach, and he's able to get in the car. I'm not sure if he was in the car in the first practice session this weekend, but he's able to get in the car and go help with the setup and then give the driver great feedback. So he and Courtney working close together. They work close together at Mid-Ohio under some challenging conditions there. Had a little bit of rain and the track conditions changing the entire time. But when you've got a coach like Jeff Westphal, you got some good help sitting there on the box talking to you on the radio, along with Steve Dinan, who runs this program. And Courtney Crone has really kind of found a home, I think, here in this GT4 machinery in VP Racing.
I agree. She's had a really consistent season up to this point, showcased some good speed, really good racecraft, especially early in the year. I remember at Daytona, there were a few moments she was really in the wars and looked like she was right at home in that situation. Mixed conditions also have really favored her at various times over the course of the year. But the Westphal point's a great one. Not only does this championship allow driver coaches to take part in one of the practice sessions, but Jeff also is racing for this team in Pilot Challenge, also in a BMW, so he's constantly in the car. He's experiencing the evolution of the track across a weekend as well, and that just brings even more information and data to the table for Courtney in her single driver format racing here in VP Racing Sports Car Challenge.
Meanwhile, up front, Brickachek with 3.5 second lead, and that's going to ebb and flow right now because it only took 6-7 laps for the prototypes to catch the GT cars, and this is what's going to hurt, Ryan, because now you can't run those lap times that you were running before. There'll be openings where you can, and you know that your competition is going to have to work through this traffic as well, but you've got to pick through it cleanly and try to continue with that advantage in lap time to see if you can't pull that gap to that 10 seconds that he's going to need if he wants to find victory lane at the end of this 45-minute sprint.
We talk about it all the time. It's a real skill set managing traffic, whether you're in the top class or the lower class. In both cases, there's a skill to how you manage all of this traffic, and this is another reason why this is such a good entry point for drivers that are trying to make their way up to the WeatherTech Championship. We've said it before, it's basically a WeatherTech Championship in miniature with, you know, smaller, lower powered prototypes against smaller, lower powered, less downforce GT cars. And it's a great way to prepare yourself for all the challenges that will come later in your career when you step up to a series like the IMSA VP SportsCar Championship or go to the World Endurance Championship. So this is where we watch some of these young drivers cutting their teeth and start to learn those key lessons that can serve them well for the rest of their careers.
It's lessons like you watch here as prototype on GSX into turn 4. Weston Workman actually with a turn signal saying, I see you, go on by, as Oscar Tunjo slips through. And it just gives you an idea of the speed differential of the prototype versus the GT car, that aerodynamic advantage that the prototype has, especially through the twisty bits here, is absolutely huge, and the closing rate is substantial. But let's talk about championship, Ryan. Tunjo has the championship lead. We said that Wyatt Brickacheck has not run all of the races, so he's not really factoring in right now. Danny Sufi, who is second in the championship, is back and forth. If you're Oscar Tunjo, I'm not saying you give up at this point in time, but I would think that you really want to make sure you're clean in traffic. You've got the lead over your nearest competitor. While you want to win every race that you're in, you certainly don't want to throw it away by chasing somebody down that you know as well has a penalty and is going to come back to you potentially at the end of this race when that penalty is served.
That's it, exactly. I would hope that Oscar knows the situation, that Brickacheck's carrying that penalty. The team will be keeping him informed about the gap, which is starting to extend here. It's getting closer to 5 seconds now, and at this rate, Brickacheck could potentially be outside of that 10-second margin. But something like this could change everything. As we talked about, a potential for a full course yellow. Car stopped just by pit in. This is at the exit of the S's, but looks like that car is able to get started again.
I believe that was Brian Thenis, and you see a new nose on that car because obviously some damage throughout the weekend. Thenis not had the weekend that he wanted by any stretch of the imagination. It was at the exit of turn 9. I got to believe that coming into 9, that run between 8 and 9, the car got a little upset with the entry there at 9, and around he went. Kind of no harm, no foul, but this racetrack is one, I said at the beginning of the show, it is old school, it is thrilling, and it is unforgiving. When we talk about old school, you see racetrack grass wall. The problem is you leave the racetrack, you get to the grass, you're probably getting to the wall.
Yeah, that's for sure. This place, if it goes wrong, it tends to go wrong in a big way, but that's part of the allure of a place like this. It's part of the challenge, and you know, you go back to the very beginning when Sir Sterling Moss won the first ever professional race here. That's what attracts some of the world's best drivers to come race at CTMP. And I think you probably had the same experience that I have, Brian, but I often talk to drivers who have come here for the first time. Maybe they didn't know that much about this track. They came from Europe or they came from Asia, someplace outside of the North American continent, and this isn't maybe a track that first comes to mind, but they drive it for the first time and their eyes are wide open. But so too is the smile, right? That the thrill of this place is almost unparalleled.
And think about that. You talk about opening in 1961. It has hosted IndyCar races, 6 IndyCar races back in the 60s and 70s, Formula One World Championship events, World Sports Car events, IMSA events, you name it, it is raced here. And the racetrack, by and large, hasn't really changed from a design standpoint. There's been some extra run off the asphalt, that extra asphalt at the exit of turn 2, which if a car spins now, you'll get the deceleration from spinning on the asphalt instead of being in the grass. But, you know, other than that, the challenge has remained. And I think one of the big challenges here is the weather. Obviously not today, but as you watch Oscar Tunjo come down through the compression of turn 4, you can see those undulations in the road. The frost heave in this part of the country is extensive during the winter freeze and thaw period, and it affects this racetrack. Every year you come back, it's a little bit different. The layout is the same, but the bumps kind of seem to move around a little bit, and you got to find that setup that's going to work for you, especially in these high-speed areas.
Yeah, that's really good, great point. The drivers talk about those bumps and how they migrate one year to the next. It makes that track walk early in the weekend so important, but of course that was affected by rain this weekend. So just adding to the immense challenge of this place, you don't even get the chance necessarily to go and take your normal walk around and look for the changes from one year to the next. Here's an interesting development though, Brian. We mentioned the penalty for Brickacheck that he's carrying. Oscar Tunho has been noted for track limits and was just given his final warning. 30 minutes still to go. That's a long time to carry that final warning.
Well, and you're going to get track limits calls predominantly here at this point in time at turn 2, where we see Farhan Siddiqui working through down at the bottom of the hill, Travis Hill just in front, and there goes Tunho down into turn 5. You can exceed track limits in turn 5. Typically, you don't. That would be behind the red and white curb there to his left, but it's turn 2. You can also do it at turn 1, but they painted a little more, we'll call it racetrack, to the outside of turn 1. The green paint now, as long as you have a right side tire on it, the other 3, which would be thrilling if you were out there, the other 3 can be out on the unpainted asphalt. Let's ride with Tunho down the front straightaway to turn 1 and take a look at the areas that I'm talking about. Look to driver's left. You'll see the runoff, that little extra pavement that's painted green. He can be out there on that with 1 tire, but as he crests the hill here into turn 2, down at the bottom, all that extra asphalt that's to the outside, that red and white curbing there, drivers sometimes use it, and if you get behind that red and white curbing, they're going to call you for a track limits violation, especially if you've got GT cars in front of you that you take advantage of going around the high side at unabated speed because you didn't want to slow down and pass them on the left, because that would have cost you a little bit of time. So the officials are going to watch that and they'll make those calls, and the important thing for Tunho is that he's gotten that warning, and hey, right now, with Brickacheck with just 4.3 seconds in front, this could be Tunho's victory here as long as he behaves. Good point.
Yeah, he'll need to mind his P's and Q's for the rest of this race to not run afoul of those track limits. He's doing a nice job through traffic here. We were wondering, would this provide an advantage for one or the other, and I think Tunho on aggregate has been able to inch a little bit closer to Brickacheck as they work through the GSX traffic over the last few laps. Now that they're clear of the traffic, though, Brickacheck just went back down into the 112, so 112.4. That's not far off of his best lap, and Tunho was affected by traffic slightly on that lap, but 0.6 of a second slower. So I think the traffic seems to favor Tunho slightly, but in clear track, Brickacheck has the pace advantage.
Tell you can get an idea of just the punishment that these machines go through around this racetrack, the compressions. As Oscar Tunho down through turn 4, I watched him through turn 2 as well. That car literally on the ground. You can see smoke coming off the bottom, what we call jab rock, the skid plate on the bottom that is made of wood, creating that smoke as he's on the ground. You know, the other thing is, it jars your teeth a little bit too, Ryan, when you're smacking into the ground like that. It shows you just the loads that these prototypes are going through when they get into those high compression areas.
Oh, it's huge. I thought we heard some comments from Ricky Taylor yesterday after he went and practiced the LMP2 car in the WeatherTech Championship, and he said coming out of the GTP car, he was amazed at the physicality of the LMP2 machine, which makes more downforce, is more powerful than these LMP3 cars, but is a more raw machine, let's say, than the GTP car, and the rawness maybe a bit more akin to what you have in LMP3, and I think that at least is somewhat illustrative of what these LMP3 drivers are dealing with, the amount of force coming through the cars, the lateral G's side to side, maybe more so than acceleration and braking here, but up and over those hills, through the high-speed corners, all the load that they incur when they're really leaning on that downforce. It's a workout. There's no doubt about it. This place is a real challenge.
Oscar Tunho trying to work past Ryan Thenis, and a little bit of contact there. I said Thenis hadn't had a great weekend, makes that contact, and for Tunho, you got to make sure that you're going to keep the car intact. You can't afford to bend the suspension as they make that contact there, and you wonder about the left side of that number 1 right now. Was there any damage to it after that contact with Thenis?
It's a fair question. You would hope not. These tend to be pretty robust cars, but if you make that contact in the wrong way at the wrong time, especially if it's the front axle and there's a little bit of steering input, that can send the shock through the steering that can cause some damage. So fingers crossed everything's okay. So far, I would say sector times don't look like they've been too terribly affected by it. That lap was certainly compromised. He lost about a second to Bricicek on that last second, and now 5.5 seconds behind. Still within that 10-second window, but it's getting to be a bit more perilous here, Brian. Now 6 seconds behind. Bricicek just needs to find 4 more seconds and have this race stay green, and he'll be able to survive that penalty for changing columns at the start.
But think about this too. You wonder what is going on inside the helmet right now of Oscar Tunjo. Obviously, he is pressing incredibly hard. He knows the lap times that Bricicek is turning. He also knows that he has that penalty, but what I'm alluding to is he's pressing so hard, he's already on his final warning for track limits, and he's willing to put the car side by side and make a little contact with lap traffic to get through. I'm not going to call it desperate, but I'm going to tell you that Oscar Tunjo, leaving absolutely nothing on the table right now, he knows he has to try to hang on to Wyatt Bricicek out in front in that 95, because as you said, that lead just continuing to build and just closing down with 24 minutes to go in this race. So 6 seconds, 6.5 seconds in hand, and we're about, call it the halfway mark of this race, give or take, right? So 6.5 times 2, if I could do some pretty simple math, that's 13, and that'll get you the victory if you're Wyatt Bricicek. That's
the Baylor education right there, Brian. Well done.
6.5 years worth.
Arithmetic.
And I don't even have doctor in front of my name.
I go back, though, to your previous point about Tunjo and where he's running relative to his competition in the championship. Sufi is who he's comparing himself to. Even if he were to fall outside of that 10-second range behind Bricicek, even if he were just to finish second, it would still be a really good points day for Oscar Tunjo. And as that risk factor starts to creep up, as he starts to take those risks, if you're that Gebhardt team, do you think about maybe sending that message, hey, you know what? You're going to be advancing your cause for the championship as you run. Even if you don't beat Bricicek, today is a good day. If you have a penalty for track limits, if you have contact coming through traffic by taking too much risk, it has the opportunity to potentially turn that on its head and make this a good day for Sufi. So if it becomes clear that he's not going to be able to stay within 10 seconds of Bricicek, there might be reason to come on the radio and caution Tunjo about the bigger picture here.
Well, different drivers, different team managers, you know, you can work with them in different ways, and it's one of those things that the relationship between his engineer or whoever it is that he's speaking to on the pit box, that's a special one, because that is it can be a calming influence, or if you don't have the great relationship, it can be aggravating, right? And so whoever's talking to Oscar needs to understand his personality and how he needs to be communicated with and what it is that he wants to know. And same with Oscar, he needs to trust implicitly the person on the box who's talking to him and say, these people have given me race-winning race cars, they've given me race-winning strategy, and when they speak, they're telling me the truth and good points. Good point right there. 87 is around Farhan Siddiqui, and that is treacherous, and what you don't want to see is Wyatt Bricicek is a full course caution. You're saying, get that thing started, clean, out of the middle of the racetrack, please, because that's a very dangerous place to be. You don't want a full course caution, and Siddiqui having a difficult time getting that prototype turned around, blocking the racetrack right now. Fortunately, no traffic, and the traffic coming through at this point, paying attention to the yellow flags, but man, we're still not out of the woods.
No, that's a frightening place to be. Really scary stuff there, but Siddiqui is able to get himself going again. That's a shame, because he was having a really good fight there with Hill in the Shopify Racing car for 5th and 6th, and that was the lead for the bronze subcategory for drivers that are perhaps a bit more experienced in life terms than they are in racing terms. And that was a good battle that we had going for a good chunk of the race up to that point.
Travis Hill having a good day because he's now moved up to 5th, and you talk about the bronze championship. Brian Thenis leads it. Travis Hill is 2nd right now, and we know that Thenis has not had a good weekend up here, so Travis Hill is going to move forward in this championship if he can stay in the lead in the bronze category at the checkered flag, but we still have a long way to go. You think about the time remaining here, and 20 minutes, that's still a handful of laps around a very challenging Canadian Tire Motorsport car.
Definitely. By the way, that incident between Tunho and Thenis that we talked about earlier, that was reviewed by race control. No action was taken, so they didn't deem that there was anything nefarious about that, and we continue on. But interesting to note that race control did take a look at it. Also interesting to note, Tunho is now about to fall out of that 10-second gap. It's really gone the other way here. Bricacek in clean air has been outstanding. Tunho's last lap was a 16.8. That's a bit troubling, and it's hard to say if that was traffic induced or if there could be something more to the story, but that's considerably off the pace.
I was going to say, the last time I had looked, just on the last lap, it was just around 6 seconds, the gap between Tunho and Bricacek, and then when I glanced up at 9.6 seconds, I think something happened. That's typically a little bit more than traffic to take a 3-second bite out of it. Certainly could have caught traffic at the wrong time, or remember, Siddiqui was spun there at the exit of Moss Corner at turn 5, and perhaps he had to check up there a little bit, and that cost him. But any way you look at it, now 10.8 seconds.
Yeah, and Bricacek has just raised the bar. He just did the race's best lap on the last lap at a 1:12 flat. That was 1.2 seconds faster than Tunho, who was more or less back on his pace after that really slow lap the previous time around. So Bricacek flexing some muscle here. He knows he's got Tunho where he needs to put him, over 10 seconds behind. He'll be trying to extend that gap. And now if you're Tunho, if you've fallen out of that window, I do think it's worth considering backing it down and hoping that perhaps a full course yellow brings you back into the fight again.
Yeah, I think the call to Tunho on the radio is exactly as you just said. Hey, let's hold station right here. No unnecessary risk. We've got P2 locked down, and in the championship, we're going to make some ground this weekend. Let's be smart about this. I'm interested in this 3rd, 4th place run right now. Bijoy Garg in 3rd. That was interesting because Sufi and Garg had been relatively close together, and then they dropped well behind Tunho. And I'm looking at lap times the last time around, and you can see how traffic gives and takes. Bijoy Garg was considerably slower than Danny Sufi 2 laps ago, but when I look just now, the last lap, Sufi considerably slower than Garg. So traffic here can definitely take 2 seconds out of your lap time, it looks like here. And I think Danny Sufi was on his way back up to the rear wing of the 30, but now has dropped back even further. So that ebb and flow there between 3rd and 4th on the racetrack, I thought that might develop into a fight. I'm not sure it's going to.
Not right now. Garg is pulling away at the moment. The last 3 lap times, so as we compare Garg, you can see how he's been able to pull an advantage most recently at lap 22. So Sufi, as you pointed out, was closing in. Now it swings back the other way. Little traffic now for the 3rd place driver to deal with just up ahead. I think that's Thenis. Or no, I'm sorry, that would be Siddiqui rather, that he'll be trying to put a lap on. And that won't necessarily be an easy feat either. So we'll see how this affects this fight. But for the moment, Bijoy Garg seems to have it in hand.
Yeah, I would agree. And speaking of having it in hand, ooh, big jump over the curb at the exit of 1 there. Bricacek obviously out in front, but you got to tip your hat to Nathan Toney and the entire Toney driver development team. They have put a very good Ligier chassis under Bricacek for the weekend. And when you look at team championships as well, Toney Driver Development sits 2nd and 3rd with the 2 cars that they run on a regular basis. They won both sprint races at Circuit of the Americas and then went back to Circuit of the Americas with the 2nd endurance event for VP Racing SportsCar Challenge P3 category and won that event there. And they are staring at a victory here at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park if they can hold on for the next 15.5 minutes.
If it stays green, Brian, that's really what this hinges on here for Bricicek, because at this point, a yellow, even if they restart, there just wouldn't be enough time for Bricicek to be able to pull this gap again. That's the scary part of this here for them, because Wyatt and the team, they've done everything in their power since the penalty was issued, but you know, it's not under their control. If somebody else has a mechanical issue, or if a couple of cars come together, all of this hard work comes undone.
That was the commentator's curse.
I'm not trying
Ryan,
I'm not trying to speak anything into existence here, Brian. I'm just laying out the scenario. I'm sure that Tony Driver Development is well aware of this as well.
I'm sure they are well aware of it. One mistake, it's all it takes, right? And for Wyatt Bricicek, his one mistake was at the drop of the green flag. He has been absolutely flawless since that point in time, and now that lead, it's been cut back into a little bit, 10.8 seconds, the gap between Bricicek and Tunho, and I've got to believe traffic has a lot to do with that.
I think you're right. That's what we've seen, the gap in the flow, and I go back to the trends through the first 30 minutes or so of this race, and it did seem like Tunho was a bit more decisive through the traffic, or maybe just a bit luckier with where he caught some of that traffic, and that's allowed him to keep close. But when they get out of the traffic, that's where the edge swings back the other way, and now that last lap was a massive one for Bricicek. It went from just over 10 seconds his lead over Tunho to over 12, and Oscar there had to sit and wait for only, what, a couple hundred feet? But think about the frustration, think about how much momentum that just cost him as he was working his way around the Supra.
And I believe that in the opening laps of this race, when they were catching traffic, Oscar Tunho was not that patient. Remember the track limits violation calls. I think earlier in the race, he would have kept his foot in it and just driven around the outside of Weston Workman, who is our leader in GSX. And that driving around the outside and just saying, hey, the track limits don't matter because I'm passing somebody, well, they do matter. Because if you would have to slow up in order to stay on the racetrack, that's what the officials want you to do, not just say, well, I'm the faster car, I'm going around you, and I'm going to use that extra asphalt out there. So I think maybe it was situations like that in the early going that really cost Oscar Tunho. The question is, when you look back, do you go, do I keep those in my pocket for late in the race when I need them in situations like that, instead of, you know, spending all of that equity in the beginning and using it up, and now have to sit well behaved for, you know, the remaining, what was it, 30 or 35 minutes for Oscar Tunho after being called early on this track limits violation.
It's an interesting way of looking at it. Do you effectively keep them as jokers, right, for late in race situations when you need them? I think the racing driver in you probably loves that idea, Brian, but I'm not sure that the race director in you is thrilled. And you've been both at various points in your career. Yeah,
you understand both sides, and you know, it's one of those deals. I also understand the emotion in the cockpit, as do you. And so as a driver, it is so difficult to make these decisions for a fan, for an official. We sit and we watch going exactly 0 miles an hour in our chairs, and the risk is absolutely nothing, right? We sit and watch, and we can armchair quarterback all day long, and the driver's making decisions in tenths and hundredths of a second. Sometimes as you come down through turn 2 here, there's not a lot of other option. If you've committed, and you must commit early here in 2, if you've committed from about this point all the way to the track out, there's not a lot of adjustment that you can do. Certainly not a lot of significant adjustment, because you're going to upset the car in the middle of high cornering loads, and it's not going to like it, and you're not going to like the result.
On those lines, I think we got a glimpse again of Tunho through there with a pretty big twitch in the middle of that corner, and he's dealt with that quite often. I think we've seen that a few times out of him through the race.
I heard tire noise, and no! Farhan Siddiqui in the wall. That is at turn 3, and you know what that may very well mean, Ryan?
Unfortunately, this has the looks of a full course yellow with 11 minutes or just under to go, unless Farhan can drive himself out of this situation.
No.
He cannot. Full course yellow and a 13.5-second lead for Wyatt Brikacek goes away just like that.
And it's not just the battle with Oscar Tunjo. It's not just the lead, because now everyone is going to be back together just within seconds of each other for Brikacek. Hopefully we can get this race restarted, but even on a restart, he'll be fortunate if he can pull out enough distance to even finish on the podium.
Totally, yeah. I mean, it depends how long this cleanup takes. I mean, chances are we only have a couple of laps, best case scenario. So this could drop him, yeah, outside of the podium, outside of the top 5 potentially. The good news for him is I think only 5 cars are on the lead lap. So I think that's as far back as he could go, actually, would be 5th. But even still, when you've driven a near perfect race, the only mistake he made was even before the start line, right? But unfortunately, that's what's going to be very costly here today.
Yeah, it only takes one, and for Farhan Siddiqui climbing out of his stricken Duquesne chassis AMR Track Services team on the spot immediately. And Siddiqui appears to be a little bit shaken up as he climbs out of the 87 and relying on those Track Services members to help him to the medical car. Let's take another look. We heard the tire noise as we were following the trailing car, but full course caution out and the safety car on track. They'll get the field back in order. We'll see if we can get this started. But for Farhan, he had not had a great day, and now walking gingerly to the AMR medical rapid response vehicle, and he will take a trip to Track Medical and they'll get him checked out. The AMR Track Services team always does such a great job, not only responding to the incident scene and assisting the drivers, but they will stay there and work with the track services people who are a part of Canadian Tire Motorsport Park to make sure that the incident is cleaned up appropriately and that the banding is back on the tires and the track is safe to get back to racing with. So pass around happening right now, and all those cars between the safety car and their class leader will be sent around. And if we can get back to racing, and I hope that we can, it should be probably, I would think, inside 5 minutes to go if we can get back.
I hope we can as well. But time's running out pretty quickly here. To your point about the AMR crew, each of the tracks we go to has, you know, top of the line track staff, but the AMR guys, they bring expertise at this, and so they can help to expedite the repair process when you're talking about a barrier or hooking a car up to the tow truck, all of those things that increase our chances of getting back to green flag racing, in addition to their primary job, which is to attend to drivers. And great to see them right there on the scene to deal with Farhan Siddiqui and help him into the safety vehicle. Remember, Farhan's still very new to these LMP3 cars. A lot of experience in GTs, but made the switch here recently. And I actually have been quite impressed with that transition up to this point in the season, Brian. But as we've talked about, this place is a different level of challenge, especially in a downforce car, and it just doesn't seem like it's been a good fit for Farhan this weekend, unfortunately.
Well, and we talk about driver coaches. Jagger Jones is Farhan Siddiqui's driver coach, and if you're a fan of VP Racing SportsCar Challenge, you certainly watched Jagger a couple of years ago show his skills behind the wheel here. He was absolutely wicked fast. His father, PJ Jones, Parnelli Jones, his grandfather, he's obviously need no introduction if you are a race fan. So just another example of the depth of talent in the paddock and within these teams, not necessarily within the driver's seat on the weekend, but from a coaching and a support standpoint.
Yeah, Jagger's a talented driver in his own right. We saw that, as you mentioned, in VP Racing SportsCar Challenge, but tried to make it as an open-wheel driver, had a pretty good junior single-seater career, made it as far as Indy Next, what Indy Lights is now known as, and ran at the front in several occasions, had the chance to cover him there for a few years, and you still see him around the IndyCar paddock. I think he would love to find a way to make single-seaters a career, but just like the rest of his family, that Jones family, right? They are racers through and through. It doesn't matter if it's off-road racing, sports cars, dirt circle tracks, open wheel cars, stock cars. They drive just about everything and drive them all fast.
And there's the perfect example at turn 3 of the AMR Track Services guys helping the local track people, understanding how this car, these P3 machines hang from these wreckers and how to efficiently get them on the flatbed. For the local crew that's here, they deal with all kinds of cars. For the AMR Track Services team, they're pretty specialized. They specialize in their GT-based machinery, the P3, the LMP2, the GTP prototypes. They know how they hang, they know how they work, they know the quickest way to get them on the wreckers. And the other thing is, they're racers at heart. They know they want to get this race back to green, so they're going to try to help the local guys get this sorted out and see if we can't get back there. It's going to be a tall order inside 5 minutes to go now.
Right, and we're doing safety car laps just over 2.5 minutes at the moment. Now, there is the possibility, if it looks like the cleanup is nearing completion, that race control can tell the safety car driver to slow it down a little bit and ensure that we have enough time to come around and get, or speed it up potentially depending on the circumstances, to try and get a restart in here. I know Wyatt Brickachek sure would love to, if at all possible, but first and foremost, the #1 priority is making sure that the racetrack is safe and that conditions are the way that they need to be in order to ensure that going back to racing is the correct choice.
On a day that seemed like it would be owned by Wyatt Brickachek, with his great qualifying and then the getaway from the drop of the green, it was the getaway that got him, right? That changing columns and the penalty, because the white flag is to be displayed this time by the line, and that means the checkered will be next. If you look at the time gap right now, it is going to be painful when the checkered flag comes out. He'll take it leading this race, will Wyatt Brickachek. But when you look at the cars behind the safety car right now, he'll drop all the way back to 5th position.
Yikes. Yeah, that is a tough one. And you know, I talked at the start about the fact that Brickachek's a busy guy. He's racing in various championships around the world, and by and large, that's a positive, because you're staying race fit, you're staying sharp. But the difference in regulations, one series to the next, that's always the challenge, right? When you're jumping back and forth, and just little differences, little nuances between the way we go racing here versus the way other series are run in Europe, for instance, can come back and bite you if you're not right on top of it.
White flag is out. Brickachek takes it first behind the safety car. The checkered will be the next time by, but even though Wyatt Brickachek will take it on the racetrack, the victory after the penalties is going to go to Oscar Tunho, as long as he can keep his car running right on this final lap. Weston Workman, we haven't really talked a lot about him today because there was a lot going on in the prototype category, but wow. The young man continues to impress. Obviously a great program. Obviously that Toyota Supra is a very well-balanced car, and this team knows how to put a good one underneath him. But you've got to go do the job, and for Weston Workman, he has done just that. He's pleasant out of the car, obviously wicked fast in it, and as long as he can maintain station here on this final lap around, he'll take yet another victory.
Yeah, fantastic season that he's having. He'll stay perfect, it would appear, on the season, which is a phenomenal accomplishment. Remember, it's his first year racing GT4 style cars. That's what GSX, the class here in VP Racing SportsCar Challenge, runs to. So it's been a remarkable step for him coming out of Toyota GR Cup, where he's the reigning champion. Had a great second half of the season last year and has just kept on winning as he made the step into GT4 here this year. Now, here's a curiosity for you, Brian. Ismail Elahi was running 3rd, came down the pit lane, though, on this lap, and I'm just looking back. I don't see that car. Well, there it is.
There he is.
Okay, he is still there. So, I wonder why that triggered as on timing and scoring as him coming through the pit lane. I was afraid that dropped him down the order. I'm not sure that's the case. It looks like he still is 3rd, so maybe it's a bit academic at this point. But Nevertheless, a little bit of excitement here, even under full course yellow.
A little bit of drama. And here's the thing. I believe it was last year at Watkins Glen in Lamborghini Super Trofeo, the race ended under yellow. And you had a bunch of teams kind of messing around, lagging back, charging forward, being side by side when they came across the line, making sure they didn't pick up a position, but closing the gap as much as they possibly could. And since then, there was a rule put in place that the cars need to be within a car length or two of the car in front of them when they go past the line. Why is that important? Oscar Tunjo, you know, is going to be all over the rear wing of Bricacek, even though the 10-second penalty is going to be, he'll easily be within the 10 seconds. But for the rest of the field, it's not going to matter. No one else has a penalty to serve, but you want to be lined up. You want to be ready to go. You want to be in that position. And for Oscar Tunjo, don't be lagging back, waving to the corner workers. Be close enough that the 10 seconds is going to get you your victory. Lights still on the Corvette safety car as he navigates through the final two turns. And Wyatt Bricacek, the highs and the lows of motorsports, he's experienced both today. For Oscar Tunjo, it is nothing but a high because it is yet another win for Oscar Tunjo. Your championship leader takes the win in P3.
How about that? And for the GSX class, Weston Workman remains perfect on the season. Started on pole position, pulled away, was never really challenged. And even with the full course yellow at the end, it's still victory for Workman, who will try and run that streak one race longer tomorrow.
I think about Oscar Tunjo's 6th win on the season, and when you look at Wyatt Bricacek, Tunjo and Bricacek are the only two drivers in the category that have won in both sprint and endurance rounds so far this season. So it's one of those deals where two great talents, and it's just, I feel for Wyatt, right? I feel for him, and timing and scoring now shows him back in 4th as they came across the line and the penalty was applied. So Travis Hill not close enough to the front. And that's that gap that we were talking about, right? You want to be right up there tight to see how that 10 seconds is going to play out. But I feel for him. But as we said, it is what motorsport is. It's one mistake. That one mistake can put you in the wall. That one mistake can be contact with another car. This one mistake had no physical penalty to it, Ryan. But the penalty comes at the end in the form of time, and I guess after all, that's what racing is all about, time.
It is, exactly. And let's give Tunjo some credit because he picks up the final warning for track limits before the halfway mark in this race. I think it was about 30 minutes to go in the race, and he carried that for the duration. Yes, we had the last few laps here under full course yellow, but he never made that crucial error that could have proved costly to him with the race ending under yellow as it has. Had he picked up a time penalty, we could have been talking about Bijoy Garg taking a win. So give Tunjo credit for his discipline over the final 30 minutes of this race.
Kyle Chavez with a great run to 2nd in GSX, and then Ishmael Elahe aboard that number 25. The Aston Martin this weekend, new car to him, but I think it fits him well. And if you're wondering about Weston Workman, he has picked up every marble and piece of rubber that he can on the way in. I don't know if they're worried about weight or ride height on that number 8 Toyota Supra for Workman, but they're going to make sure that it weighs enough and that it is high enough off the ground, because he has certainly picked up a lot of rocks and debris on the way in to kind of add to the mass that Toyota has. Oscar Tunjo, 6th checkered flag of the season, 6th winner's trophy, and this is going to help him in the championship.
Well, one last piece of drama here. It's not done, Brian, because Bijoy Garg was penalized for passing a car under yellow. That becomes a drive-through penalty that's converted to a time penalty. That's dropped him down to 5th. So suddenly, Sufi ends up scoring 2nd place points here today. Not ideal because he's behind Tunjo, but that at least narrows the margin that he's losing to Tunjo. That is a big win for him, and it does promote Bricacek back to the podium.
And I don't think that Bijoy Garg or the team was aware of that when they came into the pit lane. Garg looked like he wanted to go to the podium, but he was directed on back to the paddock. So that was kind of a late call there. But for Oscar Tunjo, yeah, he takes the victory. He'll celebrate, but as you said, Bricacek back up to the podium. It's not over till it's over, and sometimes it's not over until well after it's over, seemingly.
Well, we still have post-race tech to get through here as well. So
there is that.
let's highlight the fact these are unofficial results here for the moment. Oscar Tunjo, the victory once again here. Then it's Danny Sufi, Wyatt Brikacek, the highs and lows of his day today. He comes home in third.
And some struggles for Brian Thenis out there. We saw the problem for Farhan Siddiqui. Hopefully they can get that 87 back on track tomorrow. And more importantly, hope Farhan is okay as he kind of stepped gingerly out of that Duquesne after meeting the wall there at turn 3.
Yeah, that was good to see him get out of the car and with the AMR crew there to help him right away. Hopefully that car is repairable. Hopefully he's ready to go for race number 2.
Weston Workman at the top of GSX. And we talked about Kyle Chavez having a great run. Ishmael Elahi, that's the top 3. And then Courtney Crone, another good run inside the top 5, trying to hold on to that second position in the championship.
Yeah, did a great job today, just kept her head down, just off the podium. She'll be a bit disappointed with that, but a solid day. De Benedetto, 5th on home soil. Brell, also a Canadian racing here this weekend, comes home in 7th place in class.
This racetrack, we talked about it will bite you for Farhan Siddiqui. It certainly did. And the drama of motorsport, that's kind of what this racetrack is all about. For Oscar Tunjo, though, another great weekend. This Gebhardt team has raced at Mosport, Canadian Tire Motorsport Park now for years, for decades actually, and taking another victory here. They did it last year with Catalano, who went on to win the championship.
That's a great point, and maybe this is just that last little launching pad that Oscar needs to make that championship run. He's certainly been the guy to beat since the season began across both disciplines, the sprint and the endurance races. This team, they now know this series, now that they're over a full year into competing in the championship, and Oscar, too, now knows all these tracks. He's raised his game, it would appear, here this year.
Well, for Tunjo, he's got one more chance to win at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. He gets to take another shot at it tomorrow, race number 2 of the weekend. And when you look at the championship season, still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 races to go for the GSX category as well, because we've got another endurance round coming up for the P3 cars at Road America. That should be a good one, Ryan.
Yeah, always fun. That's another great racetrack, just like the one here. And good news is we get to do it again tomorrow, Brian. That was a fun race number 1.
Line them up and do it all again tomorrow right here from Canadian Tire Motorsport Park.